It's your Dockmaster Michael Atilano, and you are listening to the Starboard. The guest for this episode is artist and vocalist Debbie Davis, who has a number of songs currently as a solo artist and with composer Doug Thomas. Here to talk about her career in music and her album Dance of the Midnight Rainbow, welcome aboard Debbie Davis.
Hi. Hello. Hi.
Let's start off with your background story and how you got started in music.
Okay. In 2008, I just thought to myself, the only thing I had to look forward to was the menopause. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to look for something, try and do something for myself. So I started squash class lessons, and then I thought I'll go to singing lessons so that I could sing to myself better in the bathroom. And then shortly after that, I had a car accident. So that was paid to the physical side. So I just had the singing. So the singing lessons, I went a couple of times, and the singing teacher said, you know, you've got something going on with your voice. You should do something with it. So anyway, I found myself being into the Scottish Jazz Awards, the first ever, about 4 months after singing lessons. Somebody entered me, and then I won a runner-up Best Vocalist, Scottish Jazz Award. That's how it happened. It was all a big mistake. Sort of.
That was a beautiful mistake because your voice and your music is fantastic. A number of your songs we have played on our station. I want to say we have a total, I think we have a total of 15 of your songs, and that's not including the ones you've recorded with Doug Thomas.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, well, I've done a lot with Doug, but I've just been doing things for myself because I didn't actually think anybody would want to listen to them. But it was just an exercise for myself. A lot of songs nobody's ever heard, but I just wanted to look back over the years and think, have I improved or not? That's what the whole exercise was. So actually, I've been very surprised that people actually like them. To be perfectly honest, that's the truth. But that's good.
In your music, I hear a lot of more than just the music itself and the vocals. I hear messages of travel. Tell me about that, and tell me how you wound up in Spain from Edinburgh.
Oh, okay. Well, what happened was I was born in the UK, but my parents are from between Guyana and Venezuela in South America. So I left England when I was 5. I went there for 2 years. Then I went to live in Canada in 1969 for a year. And then because my father was a design electrical engineer, we traveled up and down the Caribbean. And eventually back in 1976, we arrived back in the UK. And then I got married in 1983 and went to Scotland. And then I've been there for the last 30 years and then retired now here to Spain. So how I met Doug was, I think he must have picked me up on one of the Scottish Jazz Award winners. And like a lot of artists, they contacted me, asked me if I would cover songs for them. So that's how I met Doug. And then Doug flew over to Scotland where I was and came with his ideas and whatever. So at the moment, what he does is he sends me his ideas, and we work with another producer who I met in Scotland. He sort of does the songs, puts them to some order, sends them to me, and then I put the words in the melody. And that's how we've been working since I came to Spain 6 years ago.
In your music, I can hear all the elements of the different places that you've traveled to coming through in the music. Specifically, I can hear South America, especially one of the songs that really stands out that you recorded with Doug Thomas is Long Spanish Nights.
Take me back to the warm summer nights. Take me back in your arms tonight. Take me back to those warm summer nights. Those long Spanish nights, those long Spanish nights with you.
That's the first one that always comes to mind when I think of your voice. And so when I hear that music, I hear a lot of, I don't want to say bossa nova, but I hear samba and I hear elements of just different elements in that song.
Yeah, well, you would, because when I'm doing my jazz singing, obviously my parents are from just above Brazil. I love doing the Brazilian songs anyway. So The fact that Doug also likes the Brazilian element. So I'm in Spain, so there's a Spanish element, a Brazilian element probably in there somewhere as well. So that's what you've heard. That's good if you've heard it.
That's the first song that was sent to us by your manager, and she's been very instrumental with getting your music onto our station in the
Good.
United States. And so we're always open to anything jazz. However, we always include world artists, and you're one of the ones that stands out a lot. She does a lot of submissions. When I had the opportunity to talk with you, I definitely jumped at it. I'm really enjoying hearing your stories behind your music because your music to me reminds me of a lot of the different places that we travel to, my wife and I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You've traveled a lot too.
Reason how our station got started is my wife and I went to Southeast Asia for a year after we got married. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that we would do when we were in Southeast Asia is when you go to restaurants or you go to places to have dinner or breakfast, you
Ah,
always hear music, whether it's regional or whether it's music that caters to Westerners. And
right.
so when we were at different places, especially along the coasts of these different places, believe it or not, in Southeast Asia, you have a lot of different cultures there, not just Westerners from Europe. We met
Yes.
people from Australia, people from Spain, people from South Korea, and the common language that we met obviously is English. But the thought behind my process of my radio station was to bring those elements of travel and the music you hear abroad and put them into one station. When I hear your music, it reminds me of being somewhere in the world.
Well, that's nice. Every time I have to do a song, I always have to think of a story. There has to be a theme and a story there. And yes, I'm not settled anywhere in my mind. I have a very international sort of outlook on everything, but there's always some story somewhere. So that's nice if that's what you hear.
How did you start with jazz music? What with jazz music resonated with you in your influences?
What happened basically was before I actually started singing lessons at all, my father came home one day from his travels. I think we were in Guyana at the time, and my father was working abroad in Canada, New Brunswick. And he came home with an album by an artist called Nancy Wilson. And I was absolutely blown away by her. I don't know why. I was absolutely blown away by her. She sang a song called West Coast Blues. And Do You Know Why, which isn't very popular, I know, but I just thought she had such a beautiful voice. And I also thought that she told a story, and I got completely pulled into it. So fast forward to 2009, which was about 40 years later, I started singing lessons. My singing teacher said, Debbie, you should do something with your voice. And I'm like, what? And I found myself in a studio with a producer, and he said to me, you've got a good voice for jazz. And I said, jazz? What's jazz? And then I realized that within my very eclectic music albums, all the albums I had, that I did have a lot of jazz. And I thought, Nancy Wilson's jazz? Yay! I can sound like her. So I have to say, Nancy Wilson is my biggest influence. So that's how I ended up. People told me, they said, your voice is good for jazz. And I thought, okay. So I've ended up doing a lot of jazz. In fact, I've really have retired now because I was doing lots of gigs in Spain and they wanted me to do a lot of soul and Motown. And now that I'm a pensioner, I've decided that I want to go back to jazz, my first love.
Well, we play a few songs from Nancy Wilson. One of them that stands out is one of her obscure songs called Sunshine.
Sunshine, 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 you are my sun.
And I also liked the person who influenced her the most was little Jimmy Scott. Beautiful. When I first heard his voice, I thought, is that a man or is it a woman? But if you read his story, and I think he was performing in his 90s and he was just a very strange guy, but what a beautiful, beautiful voice. But he too tells a story and you get pulled in. So she's been my greatest influence, I have to say. There's a beautiful song of his called I Wish I Knew.
I wish I knew someone like you could love me. I wish I knew you'd place no one above me. Did I mistake this for a real romance?
But it's arrangements as well. I just love the arrangements with all the instruments, because it's not just about the singer for me. I mean, I'll be naughty and tell you that I'm really not such a fan of the ones everybody loves, like Ella and everything, because I think she sounds too happy in all of them. But Nancy makes me cry, or makes me happy, or makes me any of these things. But I love the arrangements, and I don't think it's all about the voice. I think the voice is an instrument amongst the other instruments, and they should all work together, not just about the singer. That's just me. Every song has a story.
Yes, as they should. I think you brought up a point about songs and stories, and you just made me think about the way music is currently produced. And I'm talking about current pop music, and specifically is that they don't really have the same depth. When you hear a lot of current pop music, it's a different generation, I understand. But I hear some of the words and the themes have changed, where a long time ago, specifically before social media, the artists had to put their vision onto or into words. And so to find that happy medium between the music and the words was an art in itself.
Yes, some things just have gotten lost in the mix. That's what happened. But as I said, I'm old-fashioned that way. I just think, I mean, sometimes I think I want to cover a song, and I think I love this song, and then I'll sing, and I go, do you know what? I can't do this song any justice. I'd rather not do it. Let somebody else with a different voice. I mean, I've learned that it's not just about the voice. When I was in Scotland, every Sunday evening, I would go to a jazz club called Wigham's, and they used to have international artists from all over the world. They used to come in and they would do 2 sets. People would have dinner, and then people from the audience can come and join in. And, you know, as long as they got their charts, they could sing. And one day we were going in, and it was Valentine's Day. And the Japanese ambassador to Scotland used to come to the bar, and he was outside singing "My Funny Valentine." And, you know, I remember being one of the people who sniggered when I went in. Remember, the Japanese are really into karaoke. Yeah, but you know, when he got up to sing in his strange little Japanese accent, I felt the tears. And you know why? It's because he sang with such feeling. And I thought to myself, do you know what? It's not just about the voice. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you pull people in and you tell the story, and people feel it as well.
It reminds me of a story when we were in Vietnam. So we had went to a bar called the Far East Bar. And so what they would do is they would have artists showcase, kind of like what you're talking about, where they would have people playing music and then they'd invite members of the audience to come up. Well, this young girl, she was 16 at the time. She went up and sang "Just the Two of Us." And
Yes.
so she's a native, her native tongue is Vietnamese. But when you hear her singing, you can hear the soul and the melody coming out through the music. That's what you're describing. And it sounds very beautiful because they're making an attempt to speak another language that's not theirs, much less sing in another language. It's just a beautiful thing when you hear the soul come out of the music.
That's the whole thing. You hear the soul come out in the music, and that is the whole thing. There should be soul in it. I don't care if the music is all perfect. There have been many times I've gone and listened to somebody and thought, do you know what? Note for note, that was absolutely perfect. But I'm not feeling anything in this song. It's too shiny and perfect.
Actually, when you say that, I think more so of musicians themselves. Anybody can go and mimic note for note, song for song. Say, for instance, a saxophone player can do a saxophone solo note for note, and the soul isn't there. In other words, it's not theirs, it's someone else's. That's more of the educational approach where they teach you the notes note for note.
I know what you mean. I've just joined a big band, and there's some people who they all know music and they've all learned music, but some people can improvise and some people can't, because some people aren't really feeling it. They're just going do do do, and they're not really feeling it, and you can tell the difference. Now, when I started singing, I remember I was called shortly after I won the award. there was an American band leader in Scotland called me up and he said, Debbie, we're putting together this band. Can you sight read? And I said, no, sorry. And he said, well, sorry. He said, all the best musicians in Los Angeles can sight read. And I thought, well, I can't. I have to listen and whatever. But I suppose I'm the equivalent of the person who can play the piano, who doesn't need the music. I'm so jealous of them. So I had to learn the big bands and play with big bands. They've all got their charts. I can't sight read, but I can learn by hearing. I can sing by hearing. So I'm not technically very good, but some people are very technically very good, but they're just technical, even when they sing.
Let's talk about your album, The Dance of the Midnight Rainbow, and talk about some of the songs and your recording process.
I met Doug online and he spoke to me a lot, and he just decided somehow he would want my voice to interpret his songs. Some of his songs that he sent me had been recorded by other people before. That was around the time I did Brasilia, isn't it? Because I was in Brazil at some point.
Describes the love that I feel for you, pearly green as the water. Loving you makes me feel so beautiful, beautiful as the water. You took my heart.
But anyway, he sent me a whole load of songs to do, and then he wanted me to put lyrics to them. So, and I have to say, I was new to all of this. I don't even know why he picked me and why he thought I could do a good job, but he did. But you know something? Sometimes that's how magic happens. I have no credentials, no credentials that making me think, why would you choose me to do this? But anyway, so Doug sent me a lot of songs and he sent me their covers by other artists and asked me, where he sent me a melody. And I said, I see a woman in a Canadian village in the back of Beyond and I told him this story and he started crying and he said, that's what this story was about. And all it was the melody he gave me. It was very strange. So anyway, I had to feel my way through this album and I have to place myself in where the music takes me. So if you ask me at this minute, a lot of things there, I'm in another dimension at the moment. That's what happens.
So was Brasilia the first song that you recorded?
I think so. And I was in Brazil. I was visiting in Brazil, looking out of the window. And I think we did the Brasilia 2 as well, but I can't remember which one's on that album.
The track list lists 15 songs, and Brasilia is the first one. When you recorded these songs, did you record song by song or did you batch certain songs together?
No, I did song by song because sometimes he would send me something and he would have a suggestion. In fact, he sent when he sent his Dance of the Midnight, whatever. I think I completely changed it because that's not what I was seeing. But a lot of times, Doug and I, as I said, he would give me a melody and leave me with it. He'd say, well, that's exactly what I'm seeing as well.
Were you guys ever in the studio together or were you guys just mailing tracks back and forth to each other?
We were never in the studio together. In fact, he's never met Clark. The guy who does the production, he's never met him. I was working with Clark. Clark was the person who is in Scotland, who I met, very strange meeting, who was the one who said, you should do some jazz. It was Clark. So I was working with Clark doing a lot of other jazz work. And then Doug came along in the scene. But then Doug seemed to like Clark's work. He would send me tracks and I would take them to Clark and we'd work that way. It's a sign of the times in a way, because obviously people had to record during the lockdown as well.
Kind of how our interview is. We've never met each other face to face. And many of the people I've interviewed or currently work with, I have not met face to face neither. The beauty of being able to do stuff from home, but you still have hiccups with information out there.
You've got also Back to Blue as well. Yes?
Let's see what I have on here. I have a number of songs from you. And so the reason why I knew about your album, The Dance of the Midnight Rainbow, is because I have a majority of those songs that were submitted. Now, other songs that I have that are submitted, and not to answer your question, but Some of them are Doug Thomas songs. I have 4 of those ones. I have Long Spanish Nights, Driving in My Car, Butterflies.
Oh, oh, driving my car. I love doing that one.
Driving in my car, driving in my car, driving in my car.
Yeah, that's a recent one.
Tell me about
Yeah.
that one.
Well, where I live about 40 minutes from a beautiful beach, a beautiful Spanish holiday resort town called Majaca, which has got beautiful beaches. But just past Majaca is this mountainous, where is this going? In the mountains, and you look down at the seas there and whatever. And I just thought of this beautiful sitting in your car with the top down, driving down these beautiful mountain roads with your scarf on. But it was like I thought of one of these 1950s film stars with their cat eye glasses and the scarf around their hair. And that's what the influence was. Da 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 da. Sorry. I don't say like that normally because it's supposed to be a classy Sophia Loren type feel as you're driving in your car. That's what it's supposed to be. I was influenced by that because you drive around these mountain roads and you look down and you see the sea and the beach and no one's there. So that was the sort of influence there, driving in my car. Yes.
With heights that are terrifying, probably.
Yes, but it's beautiful here. It's the best place to retire, I have to say. It's a wonderful place here. Lots of sea, lots of sand, lots of blue, blue sky. What's the weather like where you are anyway?
Well, right now in Washington, it's very rainy and very cloudy. It's very cloudy at this time of season. Now, if
Right.
you go along the coast in Washington, we have very different beaches up here where we're at. They say not to turn your back to the beach because we have a phenomenon known as the king tide. And so the tide will come in and wash in and bring all this foam, and you never know what's going to wash into the ocean. Sometimes cars get washed to sea, and sometimes cars get washed onto the shoreline. Now, if you go south of Washington State to Oregon and California, the coastline changes dynamically. The coastlines get more sunny. Let's just put it that way.
Right. Okay. I think the last time I was in Washington, I was a child.
Oh, you've been up here before?
Yeah, I used to live in Canada because I was working as a pharmaceutical rep. That was my day job and singer at night for 30 years. But I won a prize in 1983. And where did I end up? The Empire State Building. We've flown over by helicopter. I was traveling around America, but I remember that I was in the Trump Tower and yeah, all around there. And then took a helicopter ride Hudson Bay over the Statue of Liberty as part of my prize. I was there for a week again. The last time I was in the States, I think, was in 83. That was a long time ago. But I was in Montreal 6 years ago. So
Tell us about your upcoming plans and your future with performing. Do you plan on taking your music onto the road?
well, I've just come off the road. You know, I've retired, really. This was all a joke. It was all fun. I mean, I've been flown places. I was flown to Istanbul at the Radisson just to play for somebody's 70th birthday. You know, I'm 60. So I'm just having a laugh at the moment. This for me is my retirement, making music. I'm not bothered really about making money or anything like that. And just because of all the what's going on at the moment, I don't really want to travel. The funny thing is I've just joined a jazz band and there they are. The first 2 songs they picked for me, Respect or Aretha. And I'm thinking, that's what I'm trying to get away from. Because that's what people want me to do. They want me to do Shaka Khan and Aretha Franklin and all that. So I am digging my heels in and just doing more jazz. In fact, at the moment, I'm getting together with some musicians to put together a jazz funk band. And we'll play. If there's a gig, we'll do it. If not, I mean, somebody has asked me if I will come and play for opening artists, you know, like, okay, Costa del Sol, Costa Blanca, there are big names who come over, like Alexander O'Neill or whatever. So I was asked 2 weeks ago if I would be the opening act. And I said, oh, why not? But I have to say, at this time in my life, all of this is for fun. And I'm glad I don't have to do it for the money. There's no point doing it for, oh, I'm going to be famous. All these people spoil their lives trying to be famous. I haven't been. In fact, I've just been surprised at how many people have been interested in what I do. That's been more of the surprise. I had a show at the Edinburgh Festival as well. I've met Barbara Morrison. I've done loads of things and met lots of people, but I just feel blessed. That's how I feel. I feel very blessed to have been doing this as I'm relatively older. Don't feel old here, really. I mean, at 60, I'm quite young here, but amongst the British. That's the other thing about doing jazz. It's better to be older when you're with jazz, and you've lived. You know, you have a story to tell. Sometimes the younger people, yeah, they may have lovely voices, but somehow they can't portray something that they've never experienced.
Well, Debbie, I just want to thank you for being a guest on the Starboard. I love hearing your music on Pacific Coast FM, and I loved hearing the backstories behind some of your songs. And I just appreciate you being here. Where can we find your music?
If you go on to Debbie Davis Just Jazz on SoundCloud, you'll find some of my other music. Or there's another album I've got out called Debbie Davis Delectation. Clark Sorley. Clark Sorley is the Sorley, is the artist, is the producer who produces Doug's stuff as well. So you'll hear some other stuff that I do. But Debbie Davis, Just Jazz, SoundCloud, you'll find stuff there, as well as Doug's stuff that you've got there. But thank you anyway for getting in touch. It's lovely.
Debbie, I just want to thank you for joining me as a guest on the Starboard today. You have been listening to the Starboard. I'm your Dockmaster Michael Atilano. Thank you for listening. To find out more about the Starboard podcast, look me up on Facebook. That's Dockmaster Mike on Facebook. And there you can find links to our guest and to our past podcast episodes.